Some places don't belong to people. They wait, hidden behind endless trees, buried beneath silence, untouched by time. And sometimes they don't just watch you, they learn you. They learn the voices of the people you love, the way they smile, the way they laugh, and then, when you're far enough from everyone, they call your name. By the time Don realized the two men standing in the forest weren't his friends, it was already too late, because whatever had been watching him already knew exactly who he trusted. For almost a year, Don had worked at a manufacturing warehouse tucked away on the outskirts of town. It wasn't the kind of job anyone dreamed of growing old doing. The pay barely covered rent. The work was exhausting, and during the summer, the building became something between an oven and a prison. There was no air conditioning, just old industrial fans that pushed hot air from one corner of the warehouse to the other, while sweat soaked through every shirt before lunch. By the end of every shift, his muscles screamed, his hands were blistered, and the smell of grease and metal clung stubbornly to his skin. Most people quit within weeks. Some lasted a few months. Very few stayed, yet somehow Don had made it nearly a year, not because he loved the work, but because of the people beside him, Mike and Dave. But because of the people beside him, Mike and Dave. The three of them had survived impossible workloads together. Mandatory overtime, impossible deadlines, managers barking orders, machines breaking down at the worst possible moments. After enough miserable shifts, suffering became friendship. They joked through the exhaustion, laughed through the frustration, and somewhere between 12-hour shifts and countless late nights, they became more than co-workers. They became brothers. Sometimes after work, they'd head to a local bar. Other weekends, they'd grab dinner, catch a late movie, or simply sit around drinking cheap beer while complaining about work until someone inevitably made everyone laugh. Those nights made the warehouse worth returning to. Without them, Don wasn't sure he would have lasted 6 months, but friendship didn't pay the bills. As the months dragged on, reality became harder to ignore. His paycheck disappeared almost as quickly as it arrived. Rent, utilities, gas, groceries. Every dollar already had somewhere to go before it even reached his account. Meanwhile, the endless physical labor was wearing his body down faster than he'd ever imagined, especially during July. The warehouse heat became unbearable. Some afternoons felt like working inside a furnace. His clothes stayed soaked with sweat. His head pounded constantly. More than once, he'd caught himself wondering if passing out on the concrete floor would at least earn him a break. He had applied for other jobs before, mostly out of habit. A resume here, an application there. Nothing serious, just tossing a fishing line into the water without expecting anything to bite. But something changed that week. Maybe it was another 16-hour shift. Maybe it was watching another paycheck disappear. Or maybe it was simply realizing he couldn't keep living this way forever. Whatever the reason, this time he meant it. He updated his resume, applied for several office positions, and actually hoped someone would call. 3 days later, someone did. The interview couldn't have gone better. The office building itself felt unreal. The moment Don stepped inside, cool air washed over him, like stepping into another world. The floors gleamed. Employees walked calmly through spotless hallways, carrying coffee instead of toolboxes. No screaming supervisors, no roaring machinery, no smell of oil or burning steel, just quiet conversations, computer keyboards, and air conditioning. The hiring manager smiled through most of the interview. By the end, he was already discussing benefits, vacation time, and salary. The salary alone was nearly double what Don currently made. Health insurance, weekends off, a private cubicle, regular business hours. It almost sounded too good to be true. When Don walked back to his car that afternoon, he already knew His warehouse days were over. The following morning, he handed his manager a neatly folded envelope. Inside, his 2-week notice. The manager stared at it for several seconds before sighing. "I can't say I'm surprised." Don gave an awkward smile. "I've got to do what's best for me. I know." There was disappointment in the older man's voice, but no anger. He stood up, shook Don's hand firmly, and wished him luck. That conversation lasted barely 5 minutes. The conversation with Mike and Dave was very different. "What?" Mike practically shouted across the warehouse. "You're serious? You actually found another job?" Dave looked genuinely offended. "So that's it? You're just leaving us here?" The teasing came first, then the complaints, then the guilt. Eventually, actual frustration. Don understood. If the situation had been reversed, he would have felt abandoned too. They'd spent nearly every day together for almost a year. Now that routine was ending. Finally, after lunch, the mood softened. Mike slapped Don on the shoulder. "All right, I get it. You gotta do what you gotta do." Dave nodded. "But we're still hanging out. Every weekend. No excuses." Don laughed. "You guys aren't getting rid of me that easily." For the first time all day, everything felt normal again. Or at least, it seemed that way. That night, just as Don climbed into bed, his phone vibrated. "Mike, hey man, before you leave, we all gotta hang out one last time. Schedules are gonna be different after this. Me and Dave know this awesome lake. Perfect place to drink some beer and camp for the night. You in?" Don smiled. It sounded perfect. After months inside a boiling warehouse, a quiet evening beside a lake was exactly what he needed. He replied almost instantly, "Absolutely." A few seconds later, Mike answered, "Awesome. I'll send the location. Meet us Friday after work." Don tossed his phone onto the nightstand. For the first time in weeks, he actually felt excited. He had no idea that accepting that invitation would become the biggest mistake of his life. The rest of the week passed surprisingly peacefully. The warehouse buzzed with the usual noise. Forklifts rumbled through the aisles. Metal slammed against metal. Managers shouted over machines. Mike and Dave returned to joking around as if nothing had happened. They constantly teased Don about his new office job. "Don't forget us little people. You'll probably start wearing ties. Bet you'll stop answering our calls." Every joke ended with laughter. Everything looked normal. Everything sounded normal. But every now and then, Don caught one of them staring. Not for long. Just long enough to make him wonder if he imagined it. Whenever he'd look back, they'd smile, laugh, go back to work. Still, something about those moments lingered in his mind, like a splinter buried beneath skin, tiny, almost invisible, but impossible to ignore once you noticed it. Friday finally arrived. The shift ended just before 5. Everyone exchanged quick goodbyes. Mike called out, "Don't chicken out." Dave grinned, "We'll see you at the lake." Don waved as he headed toward his car. Neither of them knew those would be the last ordinary words he'd ever hear from them. Or, at least, from the real Mike and Dave. Friday afternoon finally arrived. For Don, the workday couldn't end fast enough. The warehouse had become unbearable. The July heat pressed down on the metal roof like a giant hand, trapping every degree of warmth inside. By lunchtime, sweat dripped from everyone's sleeves, puddled beneath heavy work boots, and soaked through shirts that had long since given up trying to stay dry. The old industrial fans rattled in the corners, pushing hot air around without offering a single bit of relief. By the time the shift ended, Don's entire body ached. But tonight, none of that mattered. He was finally going to spend one last evening with the 2 friends who had helped him survive the hardest year of his life. He climbed into his car and headed home. The cool shower washed away the grime of another exhausting shift. For the first time all week, he felt human again. He packed light, a sleeping bag, a small backpack, a flashlight, 3 full cans of bug spray, a cooler packed with beer, just enough for one night beside the water. As he zipped the bag shut, his phone buzzed across the kitchen counter. It was Dave, a message, no words, just a drop location. Don tapped it. The route loaded. His smile faded. 1 hour, 36 minutes. Seriously? He stared at the screen. He had expected somewhere nearby, maybe 20 or 30 minutes outside town, not nearly 2 hours into the middle of nowhere. Before he could even think about replying, another message appeared. "We're already on the way." Don sighed. They're probably halfway there already. Backing out now would have felt wrong. This was supposed to be their last trip together before his new job started. He grabbed his keys, locked the front door, and started driving. At first, the drive was completely ordinary. Rush hour traffic, fast food restaurants, gas stations, families heading home from work. The city slowly disappeared in his rearview mirror. The farther he drove, the emptier the roads became. The shopping centers vanished. Neighborhoods became scattered farmhouses. The traffic grew lighter with every passing mile. Soon, the only thing surrounding him was endless countryside. Golden fields stretched toward the horizon. Old barns leaned with age. Telephone poles marched beside the road like lonely sentries. The radio began crackling with static. Don switched stations. Nothing, just bursts of white noise. "Guess I'm too far out." He shrugged and turned the radio off. He shrugged and turned the radio off. He shrugged and turned the radio off. Silence filled the car. Only the steady hum of the engine remained. An hour into the drive, the highway ended. According to the GPS, he needed to turn onto an unnamed road. He slowed. The paved road gave way to gravel. The gravel became packed dirt. Trees immediately swallowed both sides of the road. The sunlight dimmed beneath their branches. It felt wrong. Not dangerous, just wrong. The forest seemed unnaturally dense. Towering pines blocked almost every glimpse of the sky. Branches stretched overhead until they intertwined, forming a tunnel of leaves and shadow. Even though the sun hadn't begun setting, the road looked like dusk. His headlights almost felt necessary. The GPS announced, "Continue for 10 miles. 10 miles. On this road." Don let out a laugh. There better be one hell of a lake. The dirt path barely looked suitable for a normal car. Deep tire ruts cut through the mud. Loose rocks bounced beneath his tires. He slowed to barely 25 miles an hour. Dust swirled behind him. Every few minutes, he expected another vehicle. A truck, a camper, anything. Nothing came. No headlights, no taillights, no people. It was as though no one had driven this road for years. Then, something strange happened. He noticed the forest had gone quiet. Not completely. There were still insects, still distant birds, but something felt missing. Earlier, the woods had sounded alive. Now, the sounds came in short bursts, almost as if the forest kept falling silent, listening before speaking again. Don rolled down his window. Warm air drifted inside. He listened. Nothing. Then, somewhere far off, a single branch snapped, loud enough that he immediately looked into the trees. Nothing. Probably a deer. He kept driving. A minute later, another crack. This one, closer. His eyes searched the woods again. Still nothing. The trees stood perfectly still. No movement. No animals. No explanation. He laughed nervously. "You're freaking yourself out." He rolled the window back up. The deeper he drove, the stranger the road became. It twisted unexpectedly through the forest, sometimes so sharply he couldn't see more than 20 feet ahead. The GPS signal flickered, then disappeared. The map froze. His phone displayed, searching for signal. Great, no service, no GPS. Still nothing. The trees stood perfectly still. No movement, no animals, no explanation. He laughed nervously. "You're freaking yourself out." He rolled the window back up. The deeper he drove, the stranger the road became. It twisted unexpectedly through the forest, sometimes so sharply he couldn't see more than 20 feet ahead. The GPS signal flickered, then disappeared. The map froze. His phone displayed, searching for signal. Great, no service, no GPS, just one road, one direction, forward. He had no choice. Nearly 30 minutes later, the trees finally opened. A wide clearing appeared at the end of the dirt road. The road simply stopped. Don pulled into the open space and shut off the engine. Silence, real silence, the kind that pressed against your ears. He climbed out and stretched after the long drive. His knees popped, his back cracked. He looked around. The clearing looked abandoned. Empty beer cans, fresh tire marks carved circles into the ground. Someone had clearly been partying here recently. Yet now, there wasn't another soul in sight. No campfires, no music, no voices, no cars. Don frowned. That's weird. Mike and Dave had left well before him. They should have been here, unless they'd stopped somewhere for ice or food, or maybe they'd taken a different entrance. That explanation satisfied him for the moment. Near the edge of the clearing, a narrow trail disappeared into the forest. It was the only path leading away. He checked his phone. Still, no service. He tried texting Mike anyway. Message failed to send. He sighed. Guess they're already down there. Slipping on his backpack, he grabbed the cooler in one hand and his flashlight in the other. Then, he stepped onto the trail. The woods immediately felt different. The path was barely wide enough for one person. Tree roots twisted across the ground like giant veins. Branches hung low overhead. The deeper he walked, the cooler the air became. His footsteps crunched softly against dried leaves. The forest smelled of wet earth, old pine needles, and something else, something faint, like stagnant water or rotting wood. He couldn't quite place it. At first, the walk was peaceful. Sunlight filtered through the trees in thin golden beams. Birds chirped somewhere overhead. A light breeze carried the scent of the lake. Then, a twig snapped behind him. Don stopped, turned, nothing. Just the empty trail stretching back toward the clearing. He waited several seconds. Silence, probably another animal. He kept walking. Less than a minute later, another snap, closer this time. He spun around immediately. Again, nothing. The woods stood perfectly still. He stared between the trees. Something about them made it difficult to focus. The shadows seemed deeper than they should have been, almost like they were hiding movement. He shook his head. Nope, you're just tired. He continued. The trail wound deeper into the forest. Minutes passed. Then, crunch, behind him. He froze again. This time, he didn't turn immediately. Instead, he listened. There it was. A second step. Then, nothing. His heartbeat slowly began to climb. He turned. The trail was empty. Yet, for just a split second, he could have sworn he'd seen something disappear behind one of the trees. Not clearly, just a shape. Too tall, too thin, gone before his eyes could focus. His mouth suddenly felt dry. He swallowed. Hello? No answer. Only the wind. He laughed under his breath. Fantastic. I'm scaring myself. But despite his words, he started walking faster. Without realizing it, he stopped looking ahead. Instead, he found himself glancing over his shoulder every few seconds, because deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something had quietly begun following him, and it was making absolutely sure he never saw it. Ahead, through the trees, a shimmering reflection of sunlight danced across still water. The lake. Finally, relief washed over him. He had no idea the worst part of the night was waiting on the opposite shore. The trees slowly gave way, and the forest suddenly ended. Don stepped out onto the rocky shoreline and stopped in his tracks. For a brief moment, everything felt normal. The lake was breathtaking. Crystal clear water stretched endlessly beneath the evening sky, reflecting streaks of orange, pink, and fading blue. Gentle ripples rolled across the surface as a cool breeze drifted through the pines, carrying the scent of fresh water and damp earth. Crickets sang somewhere in the distance. Dragonflies skimmed across the surface. The entire place looked untouched, like a hidden paradise forgotten by the rest of the world. After the strange drive, after the unsettling walk through the woods, the peaceful sight felt almost unbelievable. Don let out a quiet breath. Maybe he really had been letting his imagination get the better of him. He laughed softly to himself. Guess I owe the forest an apology. Setting his cooler down beside a large rock near the shoreline, he sat and stretched his tired legs. The breeze cooled the sweat still clinging to his skin. For the first time all week, his body finally relaxed. Minutes passed, then more. The sun continued sinking toward the horizon. Its golden reflection slowly faded across the lake. Still, there was no sign of Mike, no sign of Dave, no voices, no campfire, no vehicles, nothing. Don checked his phone again. No signal, not even one bar. He sighed. They're probably just taking their time. He leaned back against the rock and watched the water. Everything was quiet, almost too quiet. Then, crack, a twig snapped somewhere behind him. His eyes remained on the lake, probably another squirrel. Or a deer. The woods were full of animals. A few seconds later, crunch! Another step, much closer. This time, he slowly turned around. Nothing. Only rows of towering trees standing motionless behind him. The shadows between them seemed darker now. The setting sun barely reached beneath the thick canopy. He stared for several moments before shaking his head. Seriously, I'm losing it. He turned back toward the lake. Another minute passed. Then, crack. Louder, closer. This time, there was no mistaking it. Someone had stepped on a branch. Don stood. His heart began beating just a little faster. He slowly turned once more, and this time, someone was there, standing behind one of the trees, half of his face hidden behind the trunk, watching him, completely still. Dave, relief washed over him, at least for half a second. Something wasn't right. The figure looked exactly like Dave. Same clothes, same beard, same baseball cap. But his face looked wrong, not injured, not distorted, just artificial. Like someone had carefully copied Dave's face from memory, but had never quite understood how human expressions worked. His skin looked stretched too tightly across his cheeks. His smile was impossibly wide, far wider than any normal person could comfortably manage. His lips barely moved, yet his teeth remained fully exposed. Every single one of them. His eyes were the worst part. They never blinked, not once. They simply stared, completely empty, as though there was nobody behind them, only hunger. Don felt a chill crawl up his spine. Dave? The figure didn't answer. It simply continued smiling, watching, almost studying him. Then, very slowly, its head tilted, not like a curious person, more like a bird trying to understand something unfamiliar. One side, then the other. The movement continued farther than a human neck should allow, almost 90 degrees. Then, with a sickening pap, its head snapped back upright. Don instinctively stepped backward. What? The thing smiled even wider. Then it finally spoke. Over here, Don. Its voice sounded almost right, almost like someone who had only heard Dave speak through an old recording. Every word carried the correct tone, but somehow lacked emotion. The lake's over here. Don frowned. His stomach tightened. What? The creature remained perfectly still. Over here, Don. The lake's over here. Its lips barely moved while speaking, almost like the words were coming from somewhere deeper inside its throat. Then, its neck began moving again. Only this time, it wasn't tilting, it was twisting, slowly, grinding, as though invisible hands were trying to rotate its head completely around. The bones cracked softly beneath its skin. Its smile never faded. Every instinct inside Don screamed, "Run!" But fear rooted him to the ground. His legs refused to move. His breathing became shallow. He couldn't stop staring, couldn't convince himself this was real. Then, movement, another tree, to his left. Someone else stepped into view. Mike, or something wearing Mike. He looked exactly the same. Same work shirt, same jeans, same familiar face, except his expression carried the exact same impossible smile, the same lifeless eyes, the same wax-like skin stretched unnaturally tight across his face. He peeked around the tree, like a child playing hide-and-seek, only children blink, children breathe, children don't stare without moving. This thing didn't. Don's pulse thundered in his ears. His voice came out shaky. "Guys," no response. "If this is some kind of joke," silence. "Seriously." His voice cracked. "It's not funny anymore." The two figures simply watched him. Neither moved, neither blinked, neither looked at each other, only him. Then Mike spoke, except it wasn't Mike's voice. It was his own, perfectly mimicking Don. "If this is some kind of joke," the exact same words, the exact same tone, the exact same fear. Goosebumps exploded across Don's arms. He stumbled backward. "No." The smiling thing repeated him. "No." Now Dave joined in. His voice had changed too, not into Don's, into Mike's, into Mike's. "Seriously." "Ozo, it's not funny anymore." The voices overlapped, not speaking to him, practicing, learning, trading voices between themselves, like children trying on different masks. Don suddenly understood something that froze the blood in his veins. These things hadn't been waiting for him. They had been listening to him. Every word, every sound, every breath. They weren't speaking, they were copying, learning how people sounded, learning how people behaved, learning how to become them. Then Dave's smile twitched, just slightly, like something beneath his skin had shifted. A low clicking sound echoed from somewhere inside his throat. Mike answered with another click, then another, back and forth, faster, louder. Neither opened their mouths. The noises came from deep inside them, like insects communicating, or predators discussing prey. Don's heartbeat pounded so violently it hurt. He slowly glanced toward the narrow trail behind him. 30 feet, that was all. 30 feet to the woods. 1 mile back to his car. If he could just reach it. He looked back at the creatures. Neither had moved. Still smiling, still watching, waiting, almost as if they wanted him to make the first move. And then, without warning, both of them smiled even wider. Their jaws slowly opened, farther, 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 until they split impossibly wide, far beyond anything a human mouth could ever do. Rows of teeth disappeared into darkness, and together, in perfect harmony, they whispered, "Run." Don didn't hesitate. He turned and sprinted into the forest with everything he had. Behind him, the woods erupted, branches shattered, heavy footsteps slammed against the earth. Entire trees groaned as something impossibly large crashed through the darkness behind him. Whatever those things truly were, they were no longer pretending to be human, and they were coming. Don ran. Not the way people run during a workout, not the way they sprint across a parking lot. He ran with the kind of desperation that only comes when every instinct in the human body is screaming the same command: survive. The narrow trail blurred beneath his feet as he crashed through the darkness beneath the towering pines. Tree roots clawed at his boots, low branches whipped across his face, sharp thorns tore at his sleeves. None of it mattered. He never slowed. Behind him, the forest exploded. Crack! A tree trunk splintered somewhere in the darkness. Another thunderous impact followed, then another. The ground trembled beneath his feet. It didn't sound like two people chasing him anymore. It sounded heavy, far too heavy. Whatever was behind him moved through the woods as though the forest itself wasn't an obstacle. Branches snapped, bushes flattened, entire saplings crashed to the ground. Each impact echoed through the trees like distant gunshots. Don's lungs burned, his chest tightened. Still, he refused to look back. Every horror movie he'd ever seen flashed through his mind. The moment you look back, you lose speed, and speed was the only thing keeping him alive. His flashlight slipped from his trembling hand. It struck a rock, the lens shattered, and darkness swallowed the trail. Now only faint strips of evening light filtered through the branches overhead. His breathing became ragged. Every inhale tasted like damp earth and pine needles. Behind him, the crashing grew louder, closer. Then, silence. Absolute silence. No footsteps, no branches breaking, nothing. That frightened him even more. Something that large couldn't simply disappear, unless it had stopped chasing him. Or worse, it no longer needed to. Don finally risked a glance over his shoulder. Nothing. Only endless rows of trees disappearing into darkness. His heart pounded inside his ears. He kept running, faster, harder. Every second felt like an hour. Then, a voice drifted through the woods, soft, almost playful. Don. He froze for half a heartbeat. It was Mike. At least, it sounded exactly like Mike. Somewhere behind him, not close, not far, just hidden among the trees. Don. Another voice answered. Dave, you went the wrong way. The words echoed strangely, bouncing between the trees. Don squeezed his eyes shut for a split second. No, he whispered to himself. They're not real. The voices laughed, not loudly, just enough to let him know they heard him. Then, both voices spoke together. Come back. His blood turned to ice. He ran even faster. The trail finally opened into the clearing. His car sat exactly where he'd left it. The only vehicle there. No trucks, no tents, no sign that anyone else had ever arrived. Don nearly dropped his cooler as he sprinted toward the driver's side. His shaking hands fumbled with the keys. They slipped from his fingers. Clink. They hit the dirt. No, no, no. He dropped to one knee, grabbed them, and jammed the key into the lock. The door flew open. He practically dove into the driver's seat. The engine hesitated. 1 second. 2, 3. Then, it roared to life. Don slammed the gear into reverse. The tires screamed against the dirt. The car fishtailed violently before shooting toward the narrow road. Dust exploded behind him. He didn't care. He buried the accelerator. The dirt road stretched endlessly ahead. His car bounced violently over deep ruts. Branches scraped both sides of the vehicle. The steering wheel shook in his hands. Still, he kept pushing faster. 30 miles an hour. 40. Nearly 50. Far faster than anyone should have driven on that road. His eyes flicked toward the rearview mirror. At first, nothing. Only clouds of dust. Then, 2 figures, standing perfectly still among the trees, Mike and Dave, or things pretending to be them, half hidden behind separate trunks, watching, smiling. Neither chased him, neither waved. They simply stood there, as if they already knew he couldn't truly escape. As his car sped farther away, their heads turned together, following him, long after the rest of their bodies disappeared behind the trees. Don looked away. When he checked the mirror again, they were gone. He didn't slow down until the dirt road finally met the highway. The moment his tires touched pavement, his phone vibrated. 1 bar of signal. Then 2, then full service. His phone immediately exploded with missed notifications. Without thinking, He grabbed it and called Dave. The phone rang. Once, twice, 3 times. Then Dave answered, completely calm. "You, where are you, man?" Don nearly shouted. "What the hell do you mean, where am I? Where are you?" There was a confused laugh on the other end. "Dude, we've been waiting for you for like an hour." Don gripped the steering wheel tighter. "What? I just came from the lake. I saw you." There was silence. Then Dave spoke again. "No, you definitely didn't. We've both been sitting here the whole time. You never showed up." Don's mouth went dry. "I swear to God. You were standing in the trees. You were smiling. You kept saying." Dave interrupted him. "Hold on." A rustling sound came through the phone. It sounded like Dave was unlocking his own phone. Several seconds passed. Then, a nervous laugh. "Don't be mad." Don said nothing. "I think I accidentally sent you the wrong location." "What?" "The pin I sent was from a party I went to last weekend. I forgot to delete it. We're at a completely different lake." Silence filled the car. Don couldn't even process the words. Different lake. His breathing slowed. His hands still shook uncontrollably. Everything suddenly made horrifying sense. No cars, no camp, no friends. He hadn't gone where Mike and Dave were waiting. He had gone somewhere else. Somewhere no one should have gone. Dave laughed awkwardly. "I can't believe you actually drove all the way out there without checking. You idiot." Don didn't laugh. He quietly ended the call, turned off his phone, and drove home. Not because he was angry, because deep down he knew if those things could imitate voices, he no longer trusted who might be calling him. The drive home passed in complete silence. Night swallowed the highway. Every pair of headlights behind him made his pulse quicken. Every line of trees beside the road felt alive. More than once, he caught himself glancing into the rearview mirror, half expecting to see those smiling faces sitting silently in his back seat, but there was never anything there, only darkness. When he finally reached home, he locked every door, closed every window, pulled every curtain. Then he sat on the edge of his bed, still wearing his muddy boots, trying to convince himself it had been a nightmare. His phone lit up. Mike calling. He declined it. A minute later, Dave called. He declined again. The calls continued. Every 15, 20 minutes. Neither of them knew why he wasn't answering. Neither stopped trying. Around midnight, the calls finally stopped. Don let out a long breath. Maybe it was over. Then his phone vibrated one last time. A text message from Dave. Attached was a photograph. Mike stood beside a beautiful lakeshore, holding a beer in one hand and giving a thumbs up with the other. Behind him, a campfire burned peacefully. Several tents sat beneath the trees. Everything looked completely normal, exactly where Don should have been. Beneath the photo, there was only one message. No emojis, no explanation. Just 6 simple words. "Over here, Don. The lake's over here." Don stared at the screen. His heartbeat slowed. Something felt wrong, very wrong. His eyes drifted toward the photograph again, toward the trees behind Mike. At first, he didn't notice it. Then, his blood froze. Half hidden behind one of the pines, barely visible in the darkness, was someone smiling. Not Mike, not Dave, someone else. Someone with a face stretched far too wide, watching the camera, watching them, watching him. And for the first time that night, Don realized the most terrifying possibility of all. Maybe those things had never been trying to stop him from leaving. Maybe they had only wanted him to know. They had learned his name, and now they knew where to find him.